For 17 years, the truth lay buried beneath ashes and grief. A story so carefully constructed, even the victim's own family believed it was fate, not a plan. In the quiet countryside of Aberdeenshire, Scotland, a car erupted in flames on a dark May night in 1994. Inside that inferno was 32-year-old nurse Clare Morris, a woman whose laughter once filled hospital corridors, whose kindness touched everyone she met. Behind the wheel was her husband, Malcolm Webster, a man everyone thought was lucky to have survived. At the funeral, Clare's brother Peter stood beside Malcolm, holding his hand tightly as both men cried. To Peter, they were two people broken by loss, but he had no idea that the hand he held that day belonged to his sister's killer. This is the chilling story of Malcolm Webster, a man who lived a double life of deceit, whose charm masked something far darker. A man who turned marriage into a weapon. You're watching Unsolved True Crimes, UTC, where we uncover the truth behind the world's most haunting real-life stories. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, because this case is one you'll never forget. Malcolm John Webster was born on April 18, 1959, in Hammersmith, West London. From the outside, his life seemed ordinary, even privileged. His father, Alexander Webster, was a senior detective chief superintendent in the Metropolitan Police's fraud squad. His mother, Odette, had once been a nurse. Together, they raised their only son in a comfortable home, believing he'd follow a stable path. But from a young age, Malcolm displayed troubling behavior. He craved sympathy and attention, often pretending to faint or fabricating illnesses. When that didn't work, he caused chaos. He set fires, earning himself the nickname Pyro among local kids. As a teenager, he told people he had cancer. He shaved his head, wrapped himself in hospital stories that never happened. The lies grew with him, becoming more convincing, more manipulative. Malcolm left school at 15 with no qualifications. He drifted through jobs: nurse, binman, office clerk, driver, never staying long, never committing to anything. He had a saying that summed up how he viewed the world. Why work hard yourself when someone else could be doing it for you? By 1989, at age 30, Malcolm had landed a job at Tawam Hospital in Abu Dhabi, working in the children's ward. It was there that a disturbing pattern emerged. Within 6 months, 3 children, all under 6 years old, died of cardiac failure while under his care. Cardiac failure in children that young is almost unheard of. A colleague later revealed that hospital supervisors discovered Webster injecting himself with insulin. They believed he had been experimenting, using the children as test subjects to perfect a method of killing that would leave few traces. But no charges were filed. There wasn't enough evidence. Rumors suggest his father used his influence to bring Malcolm quietly back to the UK before any formal investigation could begin. If that's true, that protection allowed a killer to walk free. In 1991, Malcolm was working as a nurse at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary when he met Clare Morris. She was bright, outgoing, deeply caring, the kind of woman who saw good in everyone. Her brother Peter thought Malcolm seemed cheeky and intelligent, maybe even charming. Her mother, Betty, didn't share that view. Something about him unsettled her. Despite her mother's intuition, Clare was smitten. On September 3, 1993, they were married in a small ceremony surrounded by friends and family. No one knew it would mark the beginning of the end. Soon after the wedding, Clare's health began to deteriorate. She grew tired, confused, unable to concentrate. She began relying on Malcolm for everything: meals, medications, even basic daily tasks. She told friends she felt off, that she was exhausted all the time, but couldn't understand why. What Clare didn't know was that her husband was slowly poisoning her, using temazepam, a powerful sedative meant to keep her drowsy and disoriented. He'd been testing how much she could take before slipping into unconsciousness. Friends started noticing strange behavior from Malcolm too. He staged small accidents, a car rolling into a ditch, a minor crash, almost as if rehearsing. Then, 8 months after their wedding, on May 27, 1994, Malcolm put his final plan into motion. That evening, he drugged Clare heavily, waited for her to pass out, then loaded her into their car. He drove to a remote stretch of road between Old Meldrum and Tarves, a dark, quiet route known only to locals. There, he parked near a tree, poured petrol around the vehicle, and set it ablaze with Clare inside. Moments later, an off-duty police officer passing by saw the flames and stopped to help. Malcolm staggered from the scene, claiming there was no one else in the car. He said it twice. Then the car exploded. Inside, Clare burned to death. At the hospital, doctors examined Malcolm, expecting trauma, shock, injuries. But his pulse, heart rate, and blood pressure were all completely normal. No scratches, no bruises, no burns. For a man who'd supposedly survived a fiery crash, he looked perfectly fine. Days later, at Clare's funeral, Malcolm arrived wearing a neck brace, a theatrical touch for a man pretending to mourn. He cried beside Peter Morris, hand in hand. Years later, Peter would remember that moment vividly. He squeezed my hand. We were both crying. I believed he'd lost his wife, but I was holding the hand of her murderer. Police examined the scene, but something didn't add up. There were no skid marks, no signs of a crash. The car looked like it had been stationary when it caught fire. Firefighter Derek McDonald, who attended the blaze, later said, "We all thought it was a bit off. Cars don't just burst into flames sitting still." Clare's friend Leslie Roberts also had suspicions. When she went to the couple's cottage to collect some belongings for Malcolm, she noticed epilepsy medication on the table, but neither of them had epilepsy. She told police something felt wrong, but they dismissed her concerns. The case was ruled an accident. Malcolm collected over $200,000 in insurance payouts. Within months, the money was gone. He bought a new Land Rover, a yacht, and gifts for women he'd already begun pursuing. For 17 years, everyone believed Clare's death was a tragic accident. But the truth, the horrifying truth, was that it was just the beginning. 2 years later, in 1996, Malcolm met Felicity, an oncology nurse from New Zealand. They met while working in Saudi Arabia, and just like before, he swept her off her feet. He was attentive, charming, funny, and seemed to understand her in ways few people did. They married in April 1997 and honeymooned at Cook's Beach in New Zealand. On the first night, Felicity felt unusually tired after drinking a cup of tea Malcolm made for her. The next thing she remembered was waking up 36 hours later. There was no explanation, at least not one she could think of. But the drugging continued. During their marriage, Felicity frequently felt dizzy, disoriented, and confused. Food tasted strange and bitter. She'd sleep for 18 hours at a time. Even during her pregnancy, the symptoms grew worse. Her liver showed abnormal test results. Their baby Edward was born in November 1998, fragile, with severe eczema that disappeared weeks after Malcolm left. 3 fires followed them wherever they lived. A cottage in Scotland, a home in Auckland, even her parents' house in Takapuna, all conveniently timed when insurance or financial trouble loomed. Malcolm drained Felicity's savings, nearly 140,000 New Zealand dollars, and took out 9 life insurance policies in her name, worth over $750,000. He told her he had cancer, lied about needing treatment, and manipulated every detail of their lives. Then, in February 1999, he made his move. While driving together, Malcolm claimed there was something wrong with the steering. The car suddenly veered off the motorway, accelerating toward a power pole. Felicity, terrified, grabbed the wheel and realized it was working perfectly. They crashed into a ditch, and Malcolm immediately jumped out, yelling for her to stay inside. In the boot of the car, newspapers and petrol. She refused to stay. She got out and called her lawyer, a decision that saved her life. But Malcolm wasn't done. A week later, he tried again, luring her into a remote forest where she fell unconscious after drinking from a water bottle. She woke only because her phone rang, snapping her out of the stupor. When he saw she was awake, his reaction was chilling. "What the hell are you doing awake?" Felicity fled. Police later found petrol, wood, and newspapers in his car, the same setup he'd used to kill Clare Morris years earlier. When Felicity confronted him about the attempted murder, Malcolm's only response was, "You would have died happy." Felicity went straight to the Takapuna police station and made a full statement. Investigators ordered hair tests, and the results confirmed what she'd feared. She had been drugged for months, even while pregnant. By the time charges were ready, Malcolm Webster had fled New Zealand. He took nearly $390,000 of Felicity's money with him, leaving her with just $12 in her bank account. In July 2000, New Zealand authorities issued 4 warrants for his arrest, 2 for arson, 1 for drugging, and 1 for disabling a victim. But Webster was already thousands of miles away. back in Scotland. Over the next few years, he reinvented himself once again. He hid behind aliases, joined clubs, and blended into quiet communities. In 2002, he began a relationship with a woman named Christina Willis. She was kind, trusting, and financially stable, just the type Malcolm always looked for. He borrowed money from her constantly, never repaid a penny. He told her he had cancer, burned a computer hard drive in her garden, and convinced her to grant him power of attorney. It's not believed he tried to kill her, but perhaps he was waiting for a larger financial opportunity. He found that opportunity in 2005, when he met Simone Banerjee. Simone was a respected NHS manager from Oban, Scotland. Confident, accomplished, and financially secure. She owned a house, held $50,000 in shares, and co-owned a yacht with her father. When she met Malcolm, he told her he had terminal leukemia. He said chemotherapy had left him weak, his hair thinning, his time limited. To make it believable, he shaved his head. Simone pitied him, then fell for him. Over time, Malcolm convinced her to change her will, leaving everything to him. They began planning a transatlantic honeymoon on her yacht, sailing from the Canary Islands to the Caribbean. To most people, it sounded romantic. To Malcolm Webster, it was the perfect setup. Police later discovered that Simone's life jacket had been tampered with, the foil inside punctured, rendering it useless. Everyone else's life jackets were fine, Simone said later. I have no doubt that's how he was going to do it. But fate, and one determined investigator stepped in. In 2006, Malcolm became treasurer of the Oban Angling Club. Not long after, members discovered £4,000 missing. That small embezzlement case brought him to the attention of Detective Inspector Charles Henry. At first, Henry saw only financial misconduct until Simone's name came up. Something didn't sit right. Then, in June 2006, a woman named Jane Drum, the sister of Felicity Drum, attended a police conference in the UK. Jane, an expert in domestic violence prevention, was speaking with British officers when she mentioned her sister's terrifying ordeal with a man named Malcolm Webster. When she described the staged car crash in New Zealand, a detective paused and said quietly, "That sounds exactly like a case we had here. 2 car crashes, 11,000 miles apart, 5 years apart. The same man, the same pattern." Jane Drum refused to leave it there. She went straight to a chief superintendent and demanded action. Her determination reignited an international investigation that would finally expose the monster behind the charm. By early 2007, police searched Simone Banerjee's home. Inside, they found a stolen laptop, an unlicensed firearm, and the disturbing details of the planned yacht trip. Detective Inspector Henry realized the horrifying truth. Simone was in immediate danger. He said later, "Webster was a potential serial killer. Them sailing into international waters absolutely horrified us." In January 2008, police issued an Osmond warning, a formal notice of serious threat to life, to Simone Banerjee. When she confronted Malcolm, she described the moment as surreal. He went completely white, silent. "I knew I wasn't safe anymore." Within weeks, police publicly announced they were re-examining the death of Clare Morris, the wife Malcolm had killed 14 years earlier. They called the investigation Operation Field. The key breakthrough came from a piece of evidence thought long useless: a fragment of Clare's liver tissue preserved in paraffin wax after her 1994 post-mortem. Forensic scientists had never needed to test tissue that old before. But new technology made it possible. Using an innovative dewaxing technique, they extracted trace chemicals from the sample. What they found changed everything. The results showed a 92.4% probability that temazepam, the sedative Webster had used on Felicity, was present in Clare's liver. She had never been prescribed it. That single result transformed the case from suspicion to proof. The investigation that followed was compared to the Lockerbie bombing in its complexity. It lasted 5 years, crossing 6 countries, involving over 1,000 witness statements and 90 search warrants. The FBI even assisted with interviews of expatriates abroad. Detective Chief Inspector Phil Chapman led the operation. His team worked day and night, chasing a killer who had hidden behind sympathy for nearly 2 decades. By 2010, police were ready. Malcolm Webster was arrested and charged with the murder of Clare Morris, the attempted murder of Felicity Drum, and multiple counts of fraud, theft, arson, and bigamy. His trial began on February 1, 2011, at the High Court of Justiciary in Glasgow. It would last 16 weeks, the longest single accused criminal trial in Scottish history. Over 50 days of evidence unfolded before the jury. Witness after witness painted a chilling portrait. Ian Hardy testified he'd seen Webster at Clare's crash site 11 days before the accident. Forensic investigator Andrew Wade described the fire scene as, quote, deliberate. Felicity Drum recounted her 36-hour sleep, the bitter-tasting food, waking in a forest to Webster's fury. Peter Morris relived holding Malcolm's hand at his sister's funeral, realizing too late he had touched pure evil. Webster's defense team admitted he was a liar, a thief, a cheat, but insisted he was not a killer. The jury didn't agree. After less than 4 hours of deliberation, on May 19, 2011, Malcolm Webster was found guilty on all major charges. The verdict sent shockwaves through Scotland. On July 5, 2011, Lord Banerjee sentenced him to life imprisonment with a minimum of 30 years, one of the longest sentences ever given in Scotland. This was a cold-blooded, brutal, and callous crime, the judge said. The motive was the utterly base one of financial gain. You have shown no remorse. You are a considerable danger to women. Outside the court, Peter Morris spoke with quiet strength. For 17 years, it was the perfect murder, he said. He got away with it because he made it look like an accident, but Clare finally has justice. Webster appealed several times. Every appeal was rejected. By 2016, every legal avenue was exhausted. He remains at HMP Shotts in Lanarkshire, reportedly telling other inmates he expects to die in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2041 when he'll be 82 years old. For Clare's family, justice brought peace, but never closure. They fought to replace her headstone, removing Webster's name and banning him from being buried beside her. In 2019, Peter Morris passed away at just 56, after years spent ensuring his sister's story would never be forgotten. Malcolm Webster's crimes stretched over decades, across continents, relationships, and lives. He poisoned trust, turned love into manipulation, and used empathy as a weapon. He was later diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. A police profiler described him simply, quote, a sociopath in a nurse's uniform. Clare Morris was just 32, a nurse, a daughter, a sister, someone who believed in people, even the wrong ones. Her kindness met the darkest kind of betrayal. If you've been watching till now, thank you for staying with us. Cases like this remind us that evil doesn't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it smiles at you, offers you comfort, and calls you by name. You've been watching Unsolved True Crimes, UTC, where we uncover real stories that prove truth is often stranger and more haunting than fiction. If you found this story powerful, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Because behind every story we tell, someone, somewhere, still waits for justice.